Centuries before modern medicine, Native American tribes had to rely on nature's pharmacy to heal wounds and injuries. They developed an impressive healing system for wounds and diseases without hospitals or antibiotics. These remedies were based on deep knowledge passed down through generations. Some treatments were so effective that scientists are rediscovering their benefits today. How did they stop infections? What natural materials worked as pain relievers? Let's look into the fascinating ways Native Americans treated wounds using nothing but the world around them. Here are some shocking and controversial facts that will change everything you thought you knew about Native Americans. But first, if you enjoy our content about Native Americans and the Old West, remember to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you will be the first to see our new updates. Thanks for joining us once again. Let's begin. If you get a paper cut today, you'll need a Band-Aid and some antibiotic ointment. But what if you were stranded in the wilderness, miles away from the nearest drugstore? Or, better yet, what if you lived hundreds of years before modern medicine existed? Lucky for our ancestors, nature had their backs. Long before pharmacies and doctors in white coats, Native Americans, herbalists, and survivalists relied on plants to heal wounds, stop infections, and dull pain. Let's look at nature's ultimate first aid kit and see why Grandma's old "put some aloe on it" advice was pure genius. Infection is the real villain when it comes to wounds. You could survive getting stabbed by a thorn, but you're in trouble if bacteria move in and throw a party in your bloodstream. Thankfully, some plants are like bouncers at a nightclub. They kick the bad stuff out before it causes a scene. A good one was the yarrow plant. If plants had resumes, yarrows would be stacked. This little wildflower has been used for centuries to stop bleeding, disinfect wounds, and even speed up healing. Native Americans chewed yarrow root and stuffed its crushed leaves into wounds to stop the bleeding faster than you can say, "Where's my first aid kit?" Yarrow was reportedly used on battlefields to treat soldiers. It could handle your kitchen knife accident if it were good enough for warriors with swords. We also have golden seal, which has serious antibacterial properties. Golden seal contains berberine, which fights bacteria and fungi like a microscopic ninja. Native Americans used it as a wound wash, a tea for infections, and even a natural eye drop for pink eye, though we don't recommend testing that last one yourself. Why? It's awesome. It works against E. coli and staphylococcus, the same nasty bacteria that can turn a tiny cut into a hospital visit. Ever wonder why cedar chests keep bugs away? Cedar isn't just great for furniture, it's a natural germ killer. Native Americans and early healers made poultices from juniper berries and cedar bark to disinfect wounds. Think of it like the original version of hydrogen peroxide, minus the burning sensation and the dramatic bubbling. Feeling achy? Got a headache? Native Americans had a fix. Chew on some willow bark. It might sound like a punishment, but willow bark contains salicin, the natural version of aspirin. Europeans caught on to this and eventually turned it into the modern painkiller we know today. If you've ever wondered why aspirin is called acetylsalicylic acid, now you know it's because of the salicin in willow bark. Do you know that tingly, cooling feeling you get from peppermint gum? Imagine that, but on a wound. Peppermint isn't just great for fresh breath. It numbs pain and soothes sore muscles. Native healers used it in poultices for cuts and bruises, turning their patients into breath mints and pain-free warriors. And sage? This plant was the Swiss Army knife of herbal medicine. It helped with everything from sore throats to skin irritation. Plus, it made people smell nice, a bonus in the pre-deodorant era. Stopping the pain is great, but what about actually fixing the wound? Mother Nature thought of that too. If you've ever gotten sunburned, you've probably slathered on aloe vera. But did you know it's also great for cuts and scrapes? This spiky green plant is like a healing potion in leaf form. It soothes burns, reduces swelling, and speeds up skin repair. Why it's amazing? Aloe contains glucomannans, which tell your skin cells, hey, hurry up and heal. Plus, it's 99% water, making it the most refreshing bandage ever. Native Americans would split open aloe leaves and slap them straight onto burns. No fancy bottle required. How did Native Americans treat and care for their wounds? Let's start with spider webs. Spider webs might seem like a nuisance when you walk through them, but to Native American healers, they were a life-saving medical tool. Spider silk is packed with vitamin K, a crucial clotting agent with mild antibacterial properties. When pressed into an open wound, the fine webbing helped stop bleeding, reduced the risk of infection, and acted as a natural bandage. This method wasn't unique to Native Americans. Ancient Romans and Greeks also used spider webs for wound care, but many North American tribes, particularly those in forested regions, took advantage of this natural remedy. The next remedy is sphagnum moss. If modern gauze is effective, sphagnum moss might surprise you. Native Americans used this moss because it can soak up several times its weight in liquid and contains acids that prevent bacterial growth. Sphagnum moss was commonly found in wetland areas, making it a readily available first aid supply. Its effectiveness was so widely recognized that it was even used as a bandage in World War I. Charcoal is well known today for its detoxifying properties, but Native Americans used it centuries before it became trendy. They would grind charcoal into a fine powder and sprinkle it on wounds to absorb toxins, reduce inflammation, prevent infection. This method was especially useful for deep cuts and infected wounds. Even today, activated charcoal is used in hospitals to treat poisoning and wound infections. In cases where wounds were too deep to heal naturally, Native Americans relied on plant fibers and animal sinew as makeshift sutures. Dried tendons from animals, known as sinew, were particularly valued for their strength and flexibility. Once dried, sinew became an incredibly durable thread that could stitch wounds together. Unlike modern sutures, which require removal, the body naturally absorbs sinew over time. For a plant-based alternative, tribes used fibers from the yucca plant or strips of tree bark. These natural materials were softened, twisted into threads, and used to close wounds effectively. Some tribes also relied on corn husks for additional wound care applications. A common misconception is that Native American tribes used ant heads as sutures. While some South American indigenous groups, such as those in the Amazon, utilized large soldier ants, eciton species, to bite and seal wounds, there is no substantial historical evidence that this practice was widespread among North American tribes. Instead, they predominantly relied on sinew and plant fibers for suturing injuries. Once bleeding was controlled and wounds were closed, proper dressing was essential to prevent infection and promote healing. In the absence of modern bandages, Native Americans used various materials to protect wounds. Buffalo hide was one of the most common wound coverings, particularly among plains tribes. Softened and cleaned, Strips of buffalo hide were wrapped around injuries as a protective layer. Tree bark strips were also used as a bandage alternative, especially from birch trees. After soaking in water, to increase flexibility, these strips could be wrapped around wounds to remove dirt and bacteria. Natural antiseptics also played a significant role in wound treatment. Honey, long recognized for its antibacterial properties, was a staple in Native American medicine. When applied to wounds, honey creates a protective barrier that locks out bacteria, promoting faster tissue regeneration. This practice has stood the test of time. Even today, medical-grade honey is used in hospitals to treat burns and chronic wounds. Another powerful antiseptic was tree resin, particularly pine sap. This sticky substance acted as a natural wound sealant, reducing swelling and preventing bacterial infections. When slightly warmed, the resin could be easily applied to cuts and abrasions, forming a protective barrier that aided in faster healing. If you walked into a Native American healing lodge, you might have mistaken it for an intense barbecue. That's because one of their most effective disinfectants was in smoke. Using specific herbs, they would burn their way to clean wounds, which, despite sounding like something out of a survivalist's fever dream, was a surprisingly effective infection control. Sage, for instance, wasn't just burned to cleanse bad energy. It was also used to kill bacteria. Juniper and cedar smoke were known to have antifungal and antibacterial properties, meaning that instead of rubbing alcohol, they had the aromatic equivalent of a germ-killing air freshener. And let's not forget sweetgrass, which smelled fantastic and had the added benefit of purifying the air and opening wounds. Modern science has confirmed that burning these herbs releases compounds that actively kill bacteria, meaning those old healing lodges were early versions of sterile surgical rooms, minus the rubber gloves and blinding fluorescent lights. Long before people started spending ridiculous amounts of money on luxury clay face masks, Native Americans were slathering the stuff on wounds for a much more practical reason: survival. Clay became a natural antibiotic when mixed with salt, pulling out infection like a high-powered vacuum cleaner for germs. The process was simple but effective. A handful of clay was mixed with water, some salt was added for extra antibacterial power, and the resulting paste was smeared onto wounds like nature's version of Neosporin. The salt worked by dehydrating bacteria, making their little microbial lives miserable, while the clay absorbed toxins like a sponge. Some clays, like bentonite, even contained natural antimicrobial minerals that fought infections more effectively than a hypochondriac with a gallon of hand sanitizer. Even more amazing is that modern medicine is now investigating the use of certain medicinal clays for antibiotic-resistant infections. Doctors, with all their fancy degrees and high-tech equipment, are circling back to what Native American healers figured out centuries ago. Sometimes, all you need is some good old-fashioned mud. Surviving severe injuries without modern medical care requires ingenuity, deep knowledge of nature, and a strong tolerance for pain. Native Americans developed highly effective methods for treating broken bones, deep cuts, and even arrow wounds, all without the aid of X-rays, antiseptics, or painkillers as we know them today. Though sometimes brutal by modern standards, their techniques were practical and often life-saving. Without the ability to take an X-ray, Native American healers had to rely on careful observation and touch to diagnose fractures. They knew immediate action was necessary to prevent further damage if a bone was visibly misaligned or an unnatural lump under the skin. The first step in treating a broken bone was stabilization, which was done using splints made from readily available materials such as tree bark and animal hide. The bark was cut to the appropriate size and softened, while rawhide strips were used to bind the splint, keeping the bone secure and reducing movement. This method functioned similarly to modern casts, providing essential support for the healing process. Managing pain was another crucial aspect of treating fractures, and Native Americans turned to the natural world for relief. Willow bark, containing salicin, was widely used as a pain reliever and served as a natural precursor to modern aspirin. Other medicinal plants, such as arnica, were used to reduce swelling and bruising, while yarrow and devil's claw helped to soothe pain and inflammation. By chewing these plants or applying them as poultices, individuals could experience relief without synthetic painkillers. While these remedies were not as potent as modern medicine, they were effective enough to help injured individuals endure the healing process. Among the most serious injuries Native Americans faced were deep cuts and arrow wounds. Removing an embedded arrow required extreme caution, as improper extraction could cause additional damage or led to a fatal infection. Native healers often relied on suction techniques to remove foreign objects safely. One such method involved cupping, where a hollowed-out buffalo horn or heated clay cup was placed over the wound. As the air inside cooled, a vacuum was created, gently pulling out the arrow or any debris lodged in the wound. In cases where the arrow had barbs, pulling it backward risked tearing the surrounding tissue. Instead, the more effective approach was to push the arrow completely through the wound, minimizing further injury. Though painful, this method allowed for a cleaner exit and a better chance of recovery. Once the arrow was removed, disinfecting the wound was critical. Since antiseptics were unavailable, Native Americans used heat and herbal steam to prevent infections. Hot stones were placed near the wound to kill bacteria and seal the skin, similar to cauterization. Herbal steam, often derived from sage, cedar, or pine needles, was used to cleanse the area. To further protect against infection, natural substances such as tree resin and honey were applied to wounds. These materials acted as antimicrobial barriers, preventing bacteria from entering and accelerating healing. Although these treatments lacked the precision of modern surgical techniques, they were highly effective in preventing deadly infections and ensuring survival. If you got sick or injured in a Native American village, you wouldn't be rushed to an ER with fluorescent lights and an indifferent receptionist. Instead, you'd be taken to a medicine man or medicine woman, a highly respected healer. This person knew something about plants, rituals, and how to make you believe you'd be okay. Medicine men weren't just your local herb dealers. They were doctors, psychologists, and spiritual leaders all rolled into one. They knew which plants could heal infections, which ceremonies could cleanse a troubled mind, and which spirits needed to be appeased if someone fell mysteriously ill. But their real superpower? Healing chants. Modern science now tells us that sound therapy can reduce stress, lower blood pressure, and even help with pain relief. But Native Americans figured this out long before researchers with lab coats did. They used healing chants, rhythmic, repetitive songs, to create a trance-like state in the sick person. This wasn't just for dramatic effect. It had a real psychological impact. Think of it as a primitive version of guided meditation or hypnosis. Some tribes, like the Navajo, had specific chants for specific ailments. For example, the night chant was used for illnesses believed to be caused by imbalance or bad energy. The ceremony could last 9 days because Why rush healing when you can turn it into a full-blown festival? And it involved songs, prayers, and sand paintings to restore harmony between the sick person and the universe. Did it work? Well, let's say that people walked in sick and out, feeling much better. If not because of the spirits, then because they had just been cared for by their entire community for 9 days. Another significant aspect of Native American spiritual healing was sweat lodges. These were small, dome-shaped structures covered in animal hides or natural materials designed to trap heat and steam. Once heated stones were placed at the center, water was poured over them to create a thick, cleansing steam. Sweat lodges were not merely a means of physical detoxification. They were spiritual sanctuaries where individuals sought healing, purification, and renewal. The purpose of sweat lodges extended beyond physical cleansing. Native Americans believed sweating helps remove toxins from the body, purify the spirit, and strengthen one's connection to the earth. These lodges were often used before significant events, such as battles, as they were thought to prepare warriors physically and mentally. The intense heat forced individuals to endure physical discomfort, building mental resilience and a sense of spiritual clarity. In addition to sweat lodges, Native American tribes conducted elaborate healing ceremonies to treat the sick. These ceremonies involved a combination of sacred herbs, such as sage and sweetgrass, which were burned to cleanse the environment, rhythmic drumming and rattling to create healing vibrations, and prayers led by the medicine man. Some ceremonies also included dancing, which was believed to channel positive energy and aid in the healing process. One well-known healing ritual was the ghost dance, performed by certain Plains tribes. While primarily a spiritual movement, it was believed to have healing properties, helping individuals overcome emotional and physical suffering by reconnecting them with their ancestors. Such ceremonies' sense of unity and purpose provided psychological comfort and renewed hope for those in distress. While many aspects of Native American spiritual healing may seem mystical or outdated, modern science has revealed that these practices had genuine benefits. The placebo effect, for instance, demonstrates the power of belief in healing. When individuals believe they receive effective treatment, their bodies often respond positively. Healing chants, ceremonies, and the presence of a supportive community contributed to this effect, enhancing a person's ability to recover. While modern medicine has greatly improved upon these methods, many of the principles behind Native American healing practices continue to influence medical treatments today. And with that, we wrap up today's episode. We hope you enjoyed this video. Which story surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for joining us once again. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Native American history, remember to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you will be the first to see our new updates. See you in our next video.